Hi and welcome. I'm Jim Cunningham and welcome to the fight to fix California Prop 19, Save Your Home for Your Children. I have the honor and privilege of doing this webinar with John Kupel, who is with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley, and Scott Kaufman. So we will get started without any further ado. Again, I'm a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is purely information. So don't look at this and run off and do a bunch of stuff. I'm the managing partner at Cunningham Legal, 25 years experience. We have offices throughout California. We also help clients in Missouri, Texas, Virginia, Washington, and the District of Columbia. A certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, a real estate broker, securities and insurance licensed, and a pilot. We have John Kupel with us today. He is the president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. He's the former director of the legal affairs for Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. He's a recognized expert in California, all things tax. That's what fiscal means, all things taxes when it comes to California. He's argued several cases before the courts, and he was a member of Governor Schwarzenegger's transition team. And he's also the chairman of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Foundation. He is holds a Juris Doctorate, which is what you need to become a lawyer. And he was with the Pacific Legal Foundation, specializing in tax and political law. And I will say, my father did meet Howard Jarvis in the 70s. So I will tell you, we're separated by what, 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
There you go.
What is the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association? John, what is it? What's the point of this entity being around? How do you help people?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Well, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is of course named for Howard Jarvis, the author of Proposition 13, which is really the beginning of the modern tax revolt movement in 1978, a tax revolt movement that really spread across the nation. A number of other states after Prop 13 started to adopt tax reform, and that was all part and parcel of Reagan's attempt to bring government under some degree of control. And but Howard Jarvis knew that passing Proposition 13, which, by the way, about every institutional interest in California opposed Proposition 13. Even most of the business community, the education community, the labor, every organized big group, all the media was against Proposition 13, which reduced property taxes. Everybody was against it except the voters. The voters voted overwhelmingly, almost by 2/3, to adopt Proposition 13. So that shows that there is a disconnect between political elites and ordinary people. And I think our effort to restore the intergenerational transfer protection is part and parcel of what we've been trying to do all these years. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is California's largest taxpayer advocacy organization. And after Prop 13 passed, Howard Jarvis knew that you just can't pass something and expect to leave it on the side of the road subject to attack. So he formed the organization to protect and defend Proposition 13. As you mentioned, Jim, I'm a recovering attorney myself, and I don't get into the courtroom too often. We have 2 full-time lawyers who do that for us. I do mostly the political work and run the organization and oversee the lobbying effort too, which is why Scott Kaufman is here as well, who can talk to any of the lobbying activities that happen to be going on. Just a brief background. Some of the people watching this are probably familiar with what's going on at the federal level and the threat to remove stepped-up basis or have stepped-up basis at the federal level, which was sent shockwaves through anybody trying to do estate planning. And of course, that would have been devastating. That was part of the Build Back Better proposal. Fortunately, that fell by the wayside. What Proposition 19 did is a little bit like that, but not for your entire estate. It has to do with property. As most of you know, Proposition 13 works by limiting property taxes to 1% of assessed valuation and limits annual increases to 2% a year. So you can see how over time a property could have a significantly higher market value than an assessed value. Well, because of that, people began to see that when they tried to transfer property to their children or grandchildren, if they had that increase in basis when it changed hands, that was devastating to the estate. So what the voters did overwhelmingly back in 1986 was to pass a law that said that you could inherit the Prop 13 base from your parents or grandparents. In other words, it kind of made Proposition 13's tax system inheritable. In other words, if you had a lower base, you wouldn't get hit with a huge slam in terms of increase in taxes when the property changed hands. So, it was very important. Interestingly enough, that proposition back in 1986 was put on the ballot by a unanimous vote of the California legislature. Hard to believe that anything could be done by unanimous vote in the California legislature. And of course, it was proved overwhelmingly by California voters by about 76%. So how did we lose it? I mean, weren't people paying attention? Well, we tried to blow the whistle on this, but that election cycle in 2020 was very confused, a lot of issues. And the primary sponsor of Proposition 19 was the California Association of Realtors. Their primary objective out of Prop 19 was a different aspect of property taxes. They tried to get portability, in other words, your ability to transfer a Prop 13 base to another county. And we supported that. We've always supported the idea of portability. But because of political deals, unfortunately, part of the way they had to pay for it, which was demanded by some of our detractors, was to eliminate the intergenerational transfer. So this caught, Jim, as you know, everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
Just leading up to, go ahead.
Well, thank you for that. I know a lot of our clients are really upset because a lot of them have really sort of had as their overall estate plan the idea of being able to pass your low Prop 13 taxes to your children. And I will tell you, one thing that people are not talking enough about is affordable housing. Half of homes owned, half of rental units, of residential rental units, are owned by mom and pops. These are not hedge funds. These are not corporate owners. These are people, and I'm a homeowner. I have rental units, and I didn't raise rents last year, even though inflation went way up, because I look at this, I think, wow, rent's high enough. These people are having a hard enough time paying the rent. And, if my property were reassessed, if I were to inherit a property that had some tenants in there, maybe a school teacher, a nurse, these are people that maybe, the hardworking people, their rents are going to go way up because the taxes are going to go way up. So I think it's really crazy. This is really anti-affordable housing. And, for this example here, just to put this into context, if Helen wanted to buy a home, a piece of property years and years ago, maybe for $100,000, maybe they bought it 40 years ago, their assessed value is $250,000. The taxes are 1% by and large on $250,000. So their tax bill is $2,500. That property is worth $1.5 million. When that property changes hands, those taxes become $15,000. And so it used to be that Hal and Wanda could leave that property to their son, and the son would be paying the $2,500 a year property tax bill. Well, now that property tax bill is going to $15,000. And I will tell you what happens. As you know, once mom and dad pass away, once Hal and Wanda pass away and those property taxes go up, the son is going to sell that property and the rents are going to go up. So I think this is anti-tenant, this is anti-homeowner, anti-property owner.
I think that's absolutely right, that tenants have a huge exposure to this. And I think that's one of the reasons why many owners of small apartment buildings who are in the minority communities, either the Asian community, African-American, or Hispanic community, many of them, to them, this is one of the few ways that their communities can build intergenerational wealth. And in fact, Jim, we had one elected member of the Board of Equalization who was very progressive be very upset with what happened to Prop 19, because as she explained, this is one of the few ways that the African-American community can build up intergenerational wealth, is to be able to pass along that Prop 13 base with them, whether it is a home or a small business. And small business, quite frankly, large corporations don't have much of an interest in this, although for the greater good they should. But the reality is it's going to be homeowners, small business individuals, and of course owners of small apartment buildings, and farmers. Family farms could be devastating. So this is why we think this is so important.
Yeah. So just to kind of give context to what we're talking about, it used to be that property was taxed at about 2.6%. That's when Prop 13 was passed. That
Right.
not only capped the increase at 2% a year and rolled back to 1975 values, but this is very important. It also cut the amount of property tax that you pay as a percentage basis by a whole lot. Okay. Going from 2.6 down to 1% is basically cut it by 80%. So it's really important to realize in California, you know, it's really hard to live in California. Yes, we have high wages, but our cost of living is through the roof. The cost of housing is through the roof. This is the one little thing, right? This is it in California, Prop 13. This is like one of the gems, and it's been taken away. So, I talk about this, Susan and John and Scott, as an important property right. Property's been going up on average 6.2% a year, and property taxes have been going up 2% a year. Well, that 4.2% kind of compounds, and the longer you own property in California, the more valuable this property right is. And Prop 19 took away a very valuable property right. Now, I view it as a property right, and I know the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association views it as a death tax.
Right.
It's all of that, okay? Because the government is taking away a property right, and taxation, all taxation is you've got some, the government's going to take some of what you got, all right? That's what we're talking about here. So let's talk about properties reassessed when it's transferred. This would be a death, this would be a sale, or this would be a gift. So property is now reassessed when it changes hands. By the way, there are some certain limited exceptions. You mentioned the family farm. It's a per parcel exemption. There's a workaround. No one quite really knows how that's going to kind of play out. There is a limited home exemption, although for many of our clients, and again, to your point, you know, when you have people who their sole asset is the home, and the home that you bought for $20 or $30 or $40,000 is now worth $2 million, and that's not, it's no fault of your own, but some of these people live in very expensive gentrifying neighborhoods. The family's going to have to sell the home to pay the taxes. So, I mean, this is
that's true. And by the way, the implementation issues have been a real headache for the assessors. The assessors opposed, by large part, the Proposition 19, and we're working with a number of the county assessors, of 58 county assessors, and I've spoken to their association already once. They've invited me back to deal with not only this issue, but other tax issues. But in this case, the assessor is not necessarily our enemy. They are dealing with horrific implementation issues on Prop 19. And I think if you talk to them privately, no matter what their political stripe, you will find that they are really upset with the passage of Prop 19.
Oh, even publicly. I mean,
yes.
Because this happened so fast with so little guidance. And typically when you have a tax bill, by the way, when you have a tax bill, many times it goes through a technical advisory committee. And whether it's lawyers or the legislature or whatever it is, it goes through this vetting process. We didn't have any of that. But I will tell you, I don't want to make it sound like it's doom and gloom. Okay. So for those of you who did some planning with our firm or another firm to save the Prop 13 taxes for your kids, and we were able to serve just slightly over 100 families. We had literally hundreds of people on a waiting list. But I will tell you, there is a hope. There is a new hope. And I couldn't resist because, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, Star Wars episode. There is a new hope. Why don't you tell us what's going on? Tell us what the people who are watching here, we have a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to see this on YouTube. What can people do?
Well, what we can do is we can change the Constitution. And that is, we are in the midst of gathering signatures to place in the Constitution basically a resurrection of Proposition 58, which was that original 1986 law that put in the Constitution this intergenerational protection. It was taken away. We want to put it back. And it was taken away not that long ago, just in November of 2020 during that election cycle. So if you're going to date yourself, I'm going to date myself too here. If you've ever seen Sherman and Peabody, the old cartoon where they hopped into the Wayback Machine, we just want to go way, way back to 2020 and just reinstate the law as it existed just prior to the November election. And it's virtually identical with one exception, Jim, and that is when it comes to commercial property, the exclusion that was under Prop 58 was only for $1 million. We went back and we looked at inflation since 1986. And so if it's a commercial, if it's an apartment or a small business, that exclusion is now increased to 2.4, I believe 2.4 or 2.8. Susan or Scott can correct me, but we did apply an inflation factor on that 2.4, Scott says. Inflation factor just to reflect economic realities. That's all we're trying to do here.
And this is important. This is not market value of property. This is assessed value of property.
Right.
So this is really important. It's the number that appears on your tax bill, not what you would sell it for. And then you're thinking capital gains taxes. I'll forget all of that stuff. What we're talking about is assessed value, the number that the assessor gives to the tax collector. And then the tax collector does their magic and they come up with 1% plus a little bit, depending on where you live. And then they give you a bill. So what we're talking about is capping, is allowing you to take that low assessed value and transfer it to your children. And if and this sounds kind of grim and creepy, but if both parents are dead of a grandchild of yours, then it can go to the grandchildren, but both parents have to be deceased. But that's what we're talking about bringing back, is to transfer not the market value of 2.4 million, but that assessed value. So if you have 5 pieces of property, you add up all your assessed values on your properties. And if that's under 2.4 million and this, what you're seeking to pass becomes law, that's going to be a really big benefit for your family.
It is. And another horror story that we've just only recently heard, the 1-year anniversary of Proposition 19 was just last week. And we're hearing stories of people getting a phone call from assessors saying, what do you intend to do with the property? And they say, well, what are you talking about? And they say, well, we have to know now whether you're going to be moving into it, because that is the one exclusion that you have one of your children to move in to the property. And that's the only way you escape the reassessment. So assessors, number one, assessors aren't, they don't have the mechanism to figure out who's living in a building or not. It's insane, and they're frustrated. So many of them are now calling people who when the owners have died, they're calling people, asking them what their intentions are, and the people who are answering the phone say, I don't know, what should I do? And so this is, I'm sure, caused your industry to get into all kinds of quagmires.
All right, so let's start with a few questions. I'll put my reading glasses on here. Emmanuel asks, if the house has already been gifted to me to avoid the property tax, would this effort still be of use? Emmanuel, yes, because when it comes time to give the property to your kids, absolutely. And Emmanuel also asks, will this help for a rental property as well? Yes. And I would say that is, not only does it help the family home, because what you're talking about, John, is this very limited family home exemption.
Right.
And you have to check a lot of boxes to get it. And for a lot of people, it's just not going to work out. But this does apply to apartment buildings. Does Prop 19 affect my children only if they choose to keep a home after my death? Or does it affect them even if the home is to be sold immediately after my death? David, I would say this is one of the biggest problems that we're running into. And John, you mentioned a real world problem. Property is reassessed the moment the property owner dies. Sometimes it takes 11 months for the assessor to get the paperwork straight, and then they send you a supplemental unsecured bill. A supplemental unsecured tax bill is the worst kind of tax bill because you're personally obligated on it. So if you're the trustee or you're the executor and you've already distributed all the money, you're going to get effectively a stub bill for the 3 or 4 months that you owned the property. But if you've distributed all the money from the trust or the estate, you are individually liable, right? You're 100% personally liable for those unpaid taxes. That used to not be a problem, John, because and Susan, we had the parent to child reassessment exclusion, but that's gone. My signature petition says official top funders valid only for November 2021. Is this the form still valid for getting signatures for this?
It absolutely is. That is simply a disclosure required by some of the foolish election laws we have in the state of California, who make it very difficult to qualify initiatives, by the way. But that is one of the disclosures that, pursuant to some statute passed not too long ago, had to be put on there. So you can basically ignore that. What you can't ignore is the directions on how to return the petitions. We know we have enough petitions out there to qualify this, but the real key, as Susan and Scott will tell you, is making sure people fill them out. You don't have to fill all 6 signature blocks, but get as many as you can and follow the directions to return them.
Was Paul Gann also involved with Prop 13? I'll let you answer that one. I think I know the answer because it was part of the name.
Yeah, yes, it was. It was known as Jarvis Gann, and in a weird coincidence, it was actually Paul Gann that got me involved in taxpayer advocacy. So because I was in Northern California, that's where Paul was. And it wasn't until Howard Jarvis and Paul Gann combined their forces that they were able to successfully propose and enact Proposition 13.
Anonymous asks if my husband and I have already gifted some properties to our children before the deadline of Prop 19 went into effect by March 16. Well, it was February 16. What can we do? I would say you need to talk to an expert lawyer on that one. I would say wait. Well, I don't want to give you any advice. I would just say talk to an expert lawyer on that one. Bruce asks, I have 2 homes and 2 sons. Prior to Prop 19, I planned on leaving each son a home with them being able to keep my property tax basis. Now I feel though they will need to sell the homes as the property tax will not be affordable. Is there any hope this will be reversed? Bruce, this is what we're talking about. You're one person, you can't do it alone, but you get 1 million people together, it gets on the ballot.
Yep. Very, very important to get these petitions, get them back in.
Margaret says, thanks for hosting this webinar. Is Living Trust impacted by this? Yes, to the extent that the Living Trust owns real property, I would say. Arlene asks, go on.
Yeah. Usually people ask us what impact does the existence of the trust have. Generally, for purposes of property assessment, it's not a factor. So if somebody believes that they're protected from Prop 19's impact because they have a trust, the answer is no.
Arlene asks, how do you make the case to San Francisco tenants, places with strict rent control, because they don't have to worry about rents going up?
Well, landlords can always apply for rent adjustments, and part of the application that they fill out in order to get the adjustment is cost. What is your carrying cost for that apartment building? And now they're going to add in that taxes. Now, does that mean they're going to get it automatically? Probably not, but it will be a factor for these rent control boards to consider what the carrying costs are for the property. And quite frankly, if an apartment owner is not allowed to get a reasonable rate of return on their property, then they have a constitutional challenge against the rent control board. So I think it may be slower in increase, but my best guess, Jim, is that even with rent control, tenants will be more impacted than they otherwise would be.
Yeah, we covered this, John, and we got kind of granular with some clients. And I just to let you know where I am. I'm about 20 blocks from the Capitol. I'm in East Sac right now. I have another home in Marin, and so I'm very much in the Northern California. We have offices in Southern California, but I'm very much in that sort of aware of what's going on in the Bay Area. Bay Area is kind of unique. I would say Bay Area and LA are similar. Right. So one solution we heard, so if you're facing that reassessment and you're watching this and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do, I would seek a very low assessed value from your San Francisco County assessor and just say, look, if you raise my taxes, this is economically unviable. The property's not worth anything. Keep my taxes low. So I think that's one argument, but that's a real tough one. Matthew says this Prop 19 was passed by money from California Association of Realtors. I would like to propose a campaign to never use a real estate broker member of CAR. Well, good luck with that. Karen says, is the Board of Realtors seeing the error of their ways and doing anything to rescind this Prop 19? Where does California Association of Realtors stand on this? Well,
this is very interesting because during the Prop 19 campaign, a number of the local realtor boards were very angry with the California Association of Realtors for pushing this. In fact, some of our best allies were these local boards of realtors. When we proposed this, we went to California Association of Realtors, and they did not say they were going to oppose. In fact, they kind of left the door open for support, but they wanted to see if this initiative is viable. So my guess is if we qualify this, we could actually get the California Association of Realtors on board because, quite frankly, I think they had a lot of egg on their face from this proposal and they've heard about it. And again, assessors and a lot of other people are not very happy with the California Association of Realtors. But Jim, look, we could forgive them if they jump on board and help us qualify and pass this.
Well, I'm a member of the California Association of Realtors, so I think hopefully if there's one vote, I'm behind.
There you go.
I'm behind the repeal the death tax.
Yeah.
Anonymous asks, what evidence is needed to show my child has moved into the home as their primary residence? When is the evidence needed? Who is this evidence provided to? The assessor. Anonymous, what the child needs to do is the child needs to claim the homeowner's exemption within 1 year of the date of death or date of transfer if it's by gift. That is the black letter law rule. I don't know. That's what the rule says. Frank asks, does putting the property into a trust avoid some of these problems? No. Janet asks, hi, Janet, if the property goes to my kids, is in my trust for grandchildren through my daughter, does this bypass son-in-law go to grandchildren because of trust? I think the question is, if I leave this property in trust for my daughter, and then when she dies, it goes to her kids, that right now would be a reassessable event at every instance, unless an applicable exclusion applies. Under this Repeal the Death Tax Act, there would be no reassessment when it transfers to your daughter, provided you're under that 2.3 million limit. And then again, when your granddaughter inherits. Rod asks, is John proposing 2.4 million for rental homes or just units or commercial properties, assuming primary residence has no limit as before? Do you guys want to touch on that? What this is kind of
anything for which there is not a homeowners exclusion. I mean, that's not a primary residence. So we're talking apartments, we're talking small family farms, we're talking any commercial property, a dry cleaner, or anything else would benefit from that 2.4. And again, Scott and Susan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is correct.
Vaughn asks, yeah, anything you want to add on that, Susan? Vaughn asks, thank you for doing this. This all sounds expensive. I'm unable to get signatures, but could donate to the effort. How do I do that? How does somebody make a donation to the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers? Is it the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association or Foundation? Which one do they go to make a donation?
Neither. They would go to our website at hjta.org, and there's a red button at the very top that says repeal the death tax. Click the red button. That directs you into the specific initiative committee that we're running, which is called Repeal the Death Tax, a project of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. So the donation would be made to repeal the death tax, and there's different ways to contribute. There's another little button on that page on contribute here. So go to our main website and then click on the red button that says repeal the death tax, and that will provide you all the information, all the background that you'll need.
Matthew makes a point. Why aren't the petitions available in Spanish and Mandarin Chinese?
California law.
Are you kidding me? It has to be in English?
I believe that official initiative petitions have to be in English.
Kidding me. Man, they're making it really hard.
Yeah.
Mind you, these laws are from 1911. So this is a 1911 law that we're working under. So that's why we're mailing petitions, because they have rules about the margins, the font size, and if folks were printing them, trying to get their legal size and trying to get them printed on your 8.5 by 11 printer, it's going to resize them, and every petition on that is going to be invalid because font size may be wrong or the margins are wrong.
Yep.
1911.
For the record, we translate 120 languages in our California court system. You think they could print up a Chinese and Spanish language ballot initiative? Come on, people. All right. Mark says, will the suggested repeal or amendment to bring back the parent to child also include portability for a senior age group? Good question.
Yes, we do not touch the portability provisions of Proposition 19. So all those provisions of Prop 19 that were good relating to portability are intact. So we're only going after that portion of 19 relating to the intergenerational transfer.
Anonymous asks, will the reversal of Prop 19 be retroactive?
Yes, but with a caveat. So if you would have have benefited under the old law, you will get that benefit. But during that small period of time between Prop 19 passed and today, you don't get a refund of the taxes you otherwise would have paid, because quite frankly, Prop 19 is law. It's good law. We can't contest the validity of it. So there will be no refund, but you step back into the shoes, like I say, the Wayback Machine. Whatever benefit you would have had, you just make the application. You make the application like you would have prior to November of 2020. So yes, in that respect, it is absolutely retroactive.
Greg asks, if a home that was the family residence for 50 years and one spouse has passed and the other's gone into a senior boarding care and the home still contains household goods and not converted to an investment rental, is the house no longer a family home subject to the partial reassessment exclusion, now part of Prop 19? Greg, on those facts, I would say if it's still if it's not being rented out and your stuff's still there, I would say it is a family home. You do have the side issue of properties that are vacant. You typically can't get homeowners insurance on. So if the place burns down, you might have a hard time recovering on that. But Greg, I would definitely talk to a lawyer on that one.
Yeah, Jim, I doubt the assessors would go after a situation like that. But
remember, assessors are elected officials. That's a whole other thing.
That's right. So well, right now they have bigger fish to fry, like the other implementation problems of Prop 19.
Marilyn asks, is property in an exemption trust still subject to Prop 19? My attorney says that the property is protected. Marilyn, it depends on what it says, but typically the change in ownership occurs when the surviving spouse dies. So if you're the beneficiary of a bypass trust, when you pass away, that is when the parent to child transfer occurs, but it is on the deceased spouse's former $1 million exemption. It's a little complicated, but the short answer is, if this law doesn't change, the property, if it's not a home, will be reassessed when you pass away without looking at it. But again, this is just information, not legal advice. Ted asks, where do I get the petition to sign? How do we get our hands on one of these petitions?
You can ask for one, go to our website. We can mail you one. We also have a number of distribution sites. I believe, Scott, that those distribution sites that may be closer if you want one right away are throughout California, and we have a list of those, do we not?
We do.
Okay.
Is there a link to sign the petition online, like at moveon.org or some other online petition site?
I wish. As Scott said earlier, we're dealing with 1911 laws. We wish it were easier, but we have to, there is no way to download the petition because it's so large, and we wouldn't want to anyway, unless it was a really small initiative that you could print on a single piece of paper. This is much longer, so it's folded. And by the way, that reminds me, if your listeners sign the petition, do not rip anything off. You have to return the whole petition, because we've had, and we say that in the directions, but unfortunately we've had some people try to tear off the petition part. Those are invalid. We have to mail those back to you, and you have to track those people down and get those signatures again.
Yeah, I mean, literally you need like 997,000 signatures, and realistically it's probably close to 1.2 million, because you can't sign twice. You have to be registered to vote, all these other requirements. So Carol says, my children intend to sell my property when I die, so I can't see why we should fear reassessment. It will bring in more taxes for the schools if we get a Prop 13 and its appendages. Carol, I would say the issue here is when you pass away, the time interval between when you pass away and when the properties are sold, that is subject to reassessment. But to your point is, if you plan on selling your properties, then it shouldn't be a big deal. Here's the caveat. Once they take away the parent to child reassessment exclusion, I think the next thing is to take away the Prop 13 for commercial property. I mean, I can see that happening. So what you're going to see is this erosion of tax protections. So Anonymous asks, sorry about the post. It was sorry. Bruce asks, if I pass away before Prop 19 is recalled, would the recall then be retroactive, or would my son be stuck with the high reassessed tax? I think, John, we talked about that. It would be,
he could apply for it and get it,
but not a refund, but you would get it going.
Not a refund of the difference. Correct.
Anonymous asks, if a house has already been gifted to me to avoid the property tax and Prop 19 is later repealed, is there any way to use the old rules to get a step up in basis upon the property sale by myself, or will the repeal only benefit me when I leave this property to my children? Anonymous, you need to meet with a smart lawyer who knows what they're doing. And, whether it's our firm or someone else's firm, there is a way around that. I will just tell you straight up, there is a way around that, but it's something that's a case-by-case basis, and you need to talk to someone who knows what they're doing. Anonymous asked, my mom recently passed away with 2 rental properties left to me. Is this initiative retroactive to February 16, 2021? John, I think we answered that. Yes, it is. You won't get a refund, but at least going forward, you'll have the lower taxes.
And you will have to apply. We're assuming that the forms that were in the possession of the assessors prior to 2020 will still be the same forms that they'll use if we're successful.
Ted asks, what is the $2.4 million limit? It's the dollar amount that appears on your property tax bill where it says assessed value, not market value, not whatever the property's worth. It's whatever the assessor has on your tax bill that says what the assessed value of the property is. And that is a combined $2.4 million limit per person. So if you're married, it's 4.8 million. And there's a backhand way of doubling that if you use an entity. Emmanuel says, if this endeavor is successful, what is the anticipated timeline we could benefit? Yeah, let's walk through that. Maybe Scott or John or Susan, let's say, just walk us through the process, the ballot initiative process. So let's get it. What's the deadline? And then there's a general election, and then what happens? Just kind of walk us through, put some color on that.
Well, in terms of the effective date.
Okay, I can do that. The deadline to get the petitions back to us is April 15th. Mail them to us by April 15th. So we have a week to process them and deliver them to 58 county offices. The process for getting the petitions, you can get them right now. You can pick them up at the various locations where they're on desks for you to pick up. You can click Get the Petition on our website and we will mail it to you. You just fill out the form, tell us what you'd like. We will send you flyers. We'll send you cards like this. We'll send you door hangers if you'd like to walk your neighborhood. We'll send you a banner if you want to do a table and set it up. We also have a forum for volunteers where you can go to rdtvolunteers.com, register for the forum, communicate with people in your area about getting together and doing events, tabling, door to door, anything you want to do. You send us the petitions signed and back to us by April 15th. We will submit them to the counties. If we qualify, it will be on the November ballot.
And just one other thing in terms of the effective date, initiatives become effective the day after the election. So if we're successful, I'm sure the assessors will want a little bit of time. Give them a few weeks to ramp up a little bit, but it should become effective virtually immediately.
Bruce asks, what will happen if the property values are over 2.4 million? Bruce, this is an interesting one. It's a little bit of Sophie's choice. You can pick and choose how to apply it, whether it's applied to one property but not another. And so you might think, well, we'll sell this property but keep that one. So the long-term hold properties, you would want to use the reassessment exclusion. And the other one is it's kind of a first person to the courthouse kind of thing. So it's a claim for reassessment exclusion. So you have to claim it or lose it. So would you please repeat the website? I think we have it up here, hjta.org. Anonymous says, maybe this was discussed earlier, but why was there basically no funds spent fighting the proposition in the first place? Because,
well, it was a tough election cycle. Our number one priority in 2020 was fighting split roll, because that would have been a huge weakening of Proposition 13. So we were trying to fight two campaigns at once, and we saw that the realtors were spending, I believe they spent $5 million, and we spent a fraction of that. But even still, it was close. And 2020 hindsight, had we known that we really had a chance to defeat it, we may have redirected some of those resources. But split roll would have been a death knell for Prop 13. So we made that tactical decision, and we have to live with it.
Yeah, split roll is where they would have reassessed commercial and industrial property, but not residential.
To full market value, which would have been a massive property tax increase.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. Robert says, did I hear you, if you gift a property to my daughter, it's not a taxable event? No, it is a taxable event. Gift is. What if you're not able to get the number of signatures by the April deadline? Is there a plan B, or do you think you guys are on track?
We're not thinking of plan B. In the unlikely event that we're not successful, then I think we would look at 2024. However, the political landscape for 2022 is very good for an issue like this. Yeah. It is a good landscape for the nation as a whole, and good for California because of just political dynamics going on right now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just our firm stays politically agnostic. This is the one element that I really think it lines up for all of our clients and people who rent. And this is really important because I think you're going to hear like, oh, they're just trying to bail out the people with the $25 million Malibu home and, you know, whatever. This is not, I mean, I'm talking to people who say, look, the only thing that our family has is the family home. That's it. We're going to lose that if we get reassessed, or the only thing we have is that apartment building. And that's how we can live in California. Right. And otherwise, I think you're going to have people selling and moving out of state. Does this include second homes such as a family cabin? Yes. Shannon asks, if Prop 19 is reversed, will it also reverse the ability for people to transfer their property tax basis between any county? That is not, I think that portability under Prop 19 is unaffected by this ballot initiative, correct?
Correct.
The way I read it, yes. Marty
Correct.
says, my siblings live in another state, but are beneficiaries of a trust. Can they sign this petition, or only California residents?
Only California residents, only registered voters.
That's really important. Only registered voters. So if you're not a citizen, this is another reason to kind of, you know, get over it and become a citizen so you can actually vote. So unlike other countries, you can't vote if you're a property owner in California and not a citizen. Anonymous says, can I sign the petition if I live in and vote in another state? No, we answered that. Janet says, can you tell the website again? hjta.org. Is the petition valid for more than one party to sign, or does each voter need a petition? It's a good question.
The petition has 6 blanks where 6 people can sign, but there's a caveat here. All 6 must be from the same county, because when you sign as a circulator, you have to say, you don't have to be a resident of that county. For example, if you live in Sacramento County, but you go to Yuba County and you get 6 signatures on a petition, all from Yuba County, you sign as a circulator, you put your voting address as Sacramento, that's fine. But all the signatories have to be from the same county, which is why it's always a good idea to carry more than one petition. So someone from Sacramento might walk around, and I say, you know, if they're on K Street Mall or something, and they say, where do you live? Well, I live in Davis. Well, I have one here for Yolo County. So you have to make sure that all the signatories are in the same county, but carry multiple petitions. You probably don't have to carry one for San Bernardino County if you're up here, but maybe Amador, Placer, Sacramento. You get the idea.
Why is there no sample petition on the web? I guess because there aren't sample petitions, but there's a sample language of the initiative, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's on the I think it's on our website, and I think it's also on the Secretary of State and the Attorney General.
Let's see. Have you? So Matthew asked, have you reached out to the small property owners of San Francisco and the apartment association? How are they going to reach their members with this tight time frame?
The apartment associations have been outstanding partners. The Apartment Association of Apartment Owners of America have 6 locations. AGLA, the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, almost all the apartment associations throughout California are fully on board. And as is true, we're building up the coalition with the farm bureaus as well. And so we've got and the Small Business Coalition. It's now that's Rob Rabinius's group. This California Family Business Association, I believe it's called, because they're impacted as well.
And then we have an attorney in a Facebook attorney group. Aaron posted, here's a link to get the petition mailed to you. And it looks like a Google Forms link. Is that from your organization?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put that in the chat. So there's a link in the chat to get your, and then we'll go to the chat questions. My mom died earlier this month with 2 rental properties. Will this initiative be retroactive? Yes, but you won't get a refund. If one moves into their inherited property to abide by Prop 19, what happens to the assessment? Should they need to improve or expand the inherited property? I would say if you're not expanding the footprint, you're typically not reassessed, but to the extent you add square footage, you are. And then what legal ramifications will happen if it does go retroactive in terms of gifting and tax ramifications? I imagine the gift is complete prior to deadline of Prop 19 and the donor would be out of luck. I think those are 2 separate issues, right? Because giving a property has federal gift tax considerations, but what we're talking about is strictly property tax, right?
Right.
So there's no link online. Should I use a TOD instead of a living trust for a house we own? I think it's case specific. TODs, I don't like them. They're public. There's also Medi-Cal reimbursement. This has nothing to do with property taxes. I would say for the purposes of property taxes, there's no difference. One thing I don't like about a TOD, and this is totally off topic, is if the person who's receiving the TOD goes bankrupt, that bankruptcy judge can sign an order prohibiting you from giving the property to somebody else when you die. So that is one asset protection wrinkle I see in there. How often does that happen? I haven't seen it, but it's kind of theoretical. Clarissa asks, can I sign the petition if I live and vote in another state? No, we answered that. Sharon, thank you for sharing this. Sharon says, I've found when you make your neighbors and friends aware of what happened in Prop 19, they are very happy to sign the petition. Sharon, thank you for saying that, because I think we can all agree that this is really bad for affordable housing in California. This is the thing that, someone who owns a $25 million home in Malibu, I mean, I hate to say it, but let them get reassessed. They can afford it. What we're talking about here is we're talking about people who are scraping by to, provide healthcare for themselves, get their kids clothed, buy enough food, buy gas at $5 or $6 a gallon, whatever it is. And if you throw on a rent increase because the property taxes have gone up, this is where like Republicans and Democrats, I think, can agree on this one. So,
Yes.
And then just a few more. Marilyn asked, do you know if property in the Williamson Act loses that benefit? I think Williamson Act exists in parallel. I don't know how schooled you are in the Williamson Act, John and Susan and Scott.
Well, it's designed to preserve agricultural property and not be increased in taxable value if it's surrounded by more development. I'm not sure how viable Williamson Act is after Prop 13, because Prop 13 gives you the same kind of protection. There may be some special things under Williamson Act, but I don't think they're really at play here.
Are you finding any partisan pushback on either side of the aisle? I would venture to say this is dramatically and equally impacts Republicans, Democrats. I mean, that's my point, homeowners and renters. Are you seeing are you getting any pushback on this?
There are some, I'm sure there are some, particularly public sector labor organizations who want as much tax dollars as they possibly can get. Any proposed tax reduction, we're going to get some pushback. But I do think this is as you said, a bipartisan effort.
I could not transfer my assessed value when I moved from Santa Clara to Placer County in 2006. Since the law has changed, how can I get that benefit now? Well, Connie, you are benefiting, maybe from 2006 would be a stretch. You are benefiting from Prop 13 because your taxes can only go up 2% a year. So just even if you buy a property late, a few years ago, you're still a beneficiary of it. But the rules on that, I don't know if Placer County was one of the 10 counties in 06. You can just check in with us.
I don't think so.
I think I don't want to say no, but I think probably not. Arlene asks, I have repeatedly emailed and called both the San Francisco Apartment Association and Small Property Owners of San Francisco, but no one gets back to me. I am members of both. Any thoughts?
Keep pounding.
Keep going. Oh, all right. So we've talked about this. We talked about the overwhelming majority. We've talked about Prop 58, parent to child. And we've talked about the impact on working class families. And I added this quote in here because, we're all individual people. We're just one person. We can't do it on our own. But I don't think we should let what we can't do interfere with what we can do. Okay, so I think working together, if 1 million people work together on this, we can get this initiative on the ballot, get it up for a vote in the November election, and hopefully it'll pass. I mean, I think this is a good thing. We haven't really talked about the corporations who benefit from Prop 13, but that's where you kind of get into the political argument. I'm trying to stay into kind of the stuff that everyone agrees on, which is, I think on housing, you definitely, it's a problem if these properties are getting reassessed. As we said, 1 million signatures are needed. And so how do people go? What do they do? If somebody says, Jim and John and Susan and Scott, I saw your webinar, I saw this on YouTube. What can they do between now and April 15th, is it? Did you say April 1st?
April 15th.
April 15th.
They can go to our website at hjta.org You'll see a red flashing light at the top for repeal the death tax. Find out, click that red flashing light, and that takes you to the repeal the death tax website. Click get the petition, and you can either pick it up or we will mail it to you. You can fill out the form. If you have an office and you'd like to be a distribution point where people can come and pick up the petitions, there's a form for that also. You can fill that out and we will add you to the website so that people in your neighborhood can drop by and pick up the petitions. We will send you anything you want. We will send you banners, petitions, flyers, instructions, door hangers, cards. We will send you everything you need to help promote this to the voters so that you can get signatures. We'll even send you imprinted pens that you can use for people to sign the petitions. It's really easy, and we're here to answer questions. Every Friday, we do a Zoom webinar for all our volunteers where they can ask questions until they run out of questions. Every Friday at 3. And if you sign up to be a volunteer, you'll get that email with the link. Or you can write to us directly at the HJTA addresses. I'm Susan at hjta.org. Susan at hjta.org. Happy to answer your questions.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for spending some time with us here. I want to thank you for watching this. You know, whether you watch this on our on the webinar format or you watch it on YouTube, go ahead, subscribe to our YouTube channel and go ahead and share this. I think this might be one that you really do want to share. And so you can click your share button if you're watching this on YouTube and send this to someone that you care about, someone who's affected by this. And if you like what we're doing, review us on Google. Here's a link to, here's how we get to our website if you want to meet with us. We've gone through a lot of questions. We have just a couple of more questions. And can I share this with, Krista says, can I share this with all my tenants, or is that a conflict of interest? Krista, I think you can share it with your tenants.
Absolutely.
And I think this is this half of people in California are homeowners. The other half aren't. This affects the half that are homeowners and the half that aren't. This affects everyone, and higher property taxes aren't good for anyone. And I will tell you, when it comes to raising tax revenue in California, 2/3 of the tax revenue comes from income taxes. California is very good at raising tax revenue. Okay. We are blessed with, you look at the top companies in the world, a lot of them are in California. And every time there's some type of IPO or stock sale, they're getting a whole bunch of tax revenue. So the state has enough. We're talking about protecting homeowners. We're talking about protecting apartment owners, protecting tenants. Stella asks, will you email attendees a link to access this recording? Shella, you can go onto our YouTube. Yes, we will. Kim, if you can remind me to follow up with an email. Kim is our my assistant working off camera, but we'll go ahead and include that. With that, John, Susan, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of people that I think are a lot smarter when it comes to Prop 19 and bringing back all the good stuff that Prop 58, that parent-to-child reassessment exclusion, bringing that back. Any closing thoughts?
Just one. You mentioned, making sure we get it passed once it qualifies. Here's the reality. The challenge is going to be the qualification. But if this appears on the ballot, we are very, very confident it passes. And the reason I say that, we use very professional polling firms, and this thing is like 74% support. So the challenge is going to be getting the signatures in, qualifying. But if we qualify, it passes. Good.
That sounds very promising. I know everyone on here is like, there is a glimmer of hope, a little sigh of relief there. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. All right.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.